For those of you new to ITSM Academy, here's a quick overview. ITSM Academy is a full-service provider of IT service management education. We've developed all content in-house, including all ITIL education, as well as process design, agile, and DevOps. Since 2003, we have trained and certified tens of thousands of students. And for this particular webinar, this is very exciting for us because it is the introduction to ITIL Practitioner. And at ITSM Academy, we believe that one of our important roles in the industry is to help organizations get buy-in for their IT service management programs. To assist you in your efforts, we offer this webinar and many of our previous webinars to you and your team in a virtual environment at no charge. There's no selling involved in it. It's just our way of reaching out to the community to help organizations with their IT service management programs. So if you're interested in having us deliver this webinar for your group, just please email us at info, I-N-F-O, at ITSMacademy.com. Now let's introduce today's speaker, Donna Knapp. Donna has over 25 years of IT industry experience working as a practitioner, consultant, and trainer, and is known for her engaging and informative speaking style. Her certifications include ITIL Expert, ITIL Practitioner, CPDE, CASM, CAPO, Certified Scrum Master, DevOps Foundation, and KCS Principles. She is also the author of A Guide to Service Desk Concepts in its 4th edition, and A Guide to Customer Service Skills in Service Desk Professionals, also 4th edition, and the IT Service Management Process Design Guide. Good morning, Donna.
Good morning. Hi, everybody. So can you all see my screen? I took over there underneath you, Karen, so you should be able to see my screen now. Yeah?
I cannot yet. Oh, yes, I can. Yes, I can. Oh, you have a welcome slide.
Okay.
Yep, it's a welcome
Awesome.
slide. I see it. Perfect.
Excellent. So hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. And we're here, as the title indicates, to introduce ITIL Practitioner. And, you know, there's been a lot of excitement around the introduction of ITIL Practitioner, but I still get regularly questions from people asking, like, what the heck really is it? Is it just a new book? Is it a, you know, certification? What is it? And the answer is yes, all of the above. ITIL Practitioner Guidance is a new complementary publication that's been introduced by Axelos, and Axelos is the official accreditor of the ITIL Qualification Scheme and of the ITIL portfolio. And one of the things, and part of why I want to emphasize complementary is, you know, folks may think that this means that the ITIL core books, the 5 core books, service strategy, design, transition, operation, and continual service improvement, really aren't valid anymore, or they're out of date. And that's not really the case. By design, ITIL core contains those practices that are really intended to provide stability to your organization. They're best practices for a reason. They've been proven over the years to enable organizations to be successful. So they reflect the what in terms of IT service management. So they provide you lots of good vocabulary, lots of good key concepts, and they also are really designed to help people understand the business value of IT service management, so the why. By design, ITIL also, as part of the portfolio, there are complementary publications. And complementary publications are the things that are designed to change. So as times change, as technologies change, as new practices emerge, the intention is that there will be these complementary publications that get introduced so that, again, you can maintain stability in terms of your core practices, but then adapt those practices based on the circumstances your organization is facing. So one of the things that ITIL Practitioner Guidance as a publication is designed to do is help fill a little bit of a void in the ITIL portfolio, and that is answering the question, how do we do this? A lot of times folks go to an ITIL Foundation class and they walk out and you know, they think, this is great, this makes sense, I can see how this will help our organization. I'm not sure I understand where to start. And for a lot of time, you know, I've been around ITIL for a lot of years. For a lot of years, there were these pretty pat answers, you know, start with incident management or start with service management, right? There were lots of different prevailing answers that you would hear along the way. And ITIL Practitioner Guidance provides a little bit of different perspective on that, and I'll share with you what that perspective is coming up shortly. Now, ITIL Practitioner Guidance isn't the only complimentary publication. There's lots of them. There's publications for small organizations. There's a publication to help you with your service level management process, how to integrate ITIL and Prince 2, right? So by design, those complementary publications help you adapt to whatever the circumstance of your organization is. So yes, it's a book. Yes, it's a qualification. So there is a new certification called ITIL Practitioner, and the ITIL Practitioner certification follows on after ITIL Foundation, and I'll talk more about where it fits in the qualification scheme as we go forward. And as there is a qualification, it's also a course, and we're excited to be introducing that course at ITSM Academy coming up shortly. So before I talk to you about all the gory details of the qualification, let me kind of roll back the curtain, so to speak, and give you a little insight into what ITIL Practitioner is all about. So what ITIL Practitioner is designed to do is incorporate guidance from different methodologies. So you know, a lot of you are already familiar with ITIL, but you also absolutely may be familiar in your organizations with lean practices, agile practices. Maybe you've got Scrum or other agile software development practices going on in your organization. DevOps practices are certainly emerging. So what ITIL Practitioner does is acknowledge these practices and the fact that they really represent an integrated approach to success in an organization, especially in an organization today that's facing competitive challenges or is being challenged by leadership to go faster, to be more agile. And it really brings a little bit of a different way, a different mindset to how you approach IT service management initiatives. And one of the things that excites me about ITIL Practitioner is that it does, I believe, and it will really help people kind of shift the way they see ITIL. I'm a huge ITIL advocate. I have been for a long time, but I know that in some organizations, ITIL has gotten a little bit of a bad rap. So ITIL Practitioner is going to help you get back to why you introduce a framework like ITIL. And if you don't want to, you know, look at ITIL, then know that there are other IT service management frameworks out there. That's okay. But kind of get back to understanding how important IT service management is to an organization, especially an organization that has agile development practices going on in the dev side of the house or is introducing dev ops practices like continuous delivery. So it kind of gives you that big picture thinking in terms of how all of these fit together. It also focuses very much on understanding expectations, and that might be the expectations of your business and why, you know, Cotter says create a sense of urgency, right? What's going on in your industry or what's going on in your company that's prompting the need for improvement? Or it might just be understanding expectations of other people who are before or after you in the IT value stream. If you're in ops, then what are devs' expectations? If you're dev, what are ops expectations? Delivering practical solutions, and you know, y'all, anybody who's heard me speak before, you've heard me say this, if your ITIL processes or your IT service management processes are bureaucratic, it's because you made them that way. There are lots of great practical tips throughout the, you know, ITIL portfolio that help you be more pragmatic and practical about how you approach IT service management. And then, of course, leveraging and adapting practices. So rather than having just this puritanical view of what the books say or how you think the books are telling you to do something, think about your organization, think about the circumstances of your organization, and adapt accordingly. Apply critical thought to that. I think a big mistake that organizations make when they're introducing any kind of a framework is that they kind of think about it from from the standpoint of where they are in that moment of time, and they don't always recognize that that moment in time is very fleeting, right? So 3 months from now or 6 months from now, priorities may change, and we've got to give some thought to whether or not the way we've always done it really makes sense anymore. Perhaps it's time to change. So ITIL Practitioner focuses on the CSI approach, and any of you who have taken, you know, ITIL Foundation, or perhaps even have done some reading on ITIL, are familiar with the CSI approach. What is the vision? Where are we now? Where do we want to be? Are we there yet? It's where I channel my little kid on vacation. Did we get there? And how do we keep the momentum going? And we then marry that CSI approach to 9 guiding principles. And we also develop 3 critical capabilities, and I'll talk about what those are going forward. Now, I want to kind of sit here for a second, and I want to do a little bit of a quick poll. And so if you could take a look at your screen, let me ask you, and you actually can answer, select multiple options here. What is your organization's approach to continuous improvement? So if you could take a quick second to answer that question. Thank you. I appreciate everybody contributing. I'm just going to give, things are slowing down a little bit. We've got 65% voted, so just another couple of minutes, couple of seconds actually. Getting there, getting there, getting there, slowing down. All right, I'm going to just jot down some notes. Awesome. And thank you to everybody for participating. So if you're curious about the results, let me share them for you. I'm very excited to see that 37% of you say it's daily activity. 33% low priority. I feel your pain. And I always, you know, I kind of had to chuckle when I was preparing this poll because I put that language work on in spare time, and I'm sure some of you are out there thinking like, you assume I have spare time. And that's kind of the point, right? You don't necessarily have spare time. Tend to tackle large projects. 38% of you initiatives sometimes conflict, and 12% initiatives are well coordinated. So, you know, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this poll at this time is I understand, you know, the 27% of you who said we tend to tackle large projects. I do think sometimes the ITIL CSI approach has contributed to that a little bit. When you first learn about the CSI approach, and when people first look at the CSI approach, there is a tendency to think, you know, okay, what is the vision of our company? Where are we now overall? Like, let's do this big assessment and figure out where we are in terms of all of our processes. Where do we want to be? Let's develop a program. Let's prioritize things. You know, how are we going to get there? Then we're going to have, you know, several initiatives underway at any given point in time. And then we're going to use, you know, metrics and measurements to know, did we get there? When you understand the CSI approach, and those of you who practice lean, you call it the improvement kata, right? And the improvement kata by design is about practicing. Well, how do you master something? How do you get really good at something? You practice it. You do it over and over again. You do it on a daily basis. So one of the things that ITIL Practitioner speaks to is that the CSI approach can be applied to any improvement initiative. It doesn't have to just be those big, large programs where you're looking across your organization at how you're introducing IT service management. It doesn't just have to be a process-related initiative. It could be service improvement. You know, how can we improve our email service or our online banking service or our, you know, point of sale service? It can be making improvements to processes, of course, but it can also just be capabilities. Looking at, for example, the skill sets that we have within our organization. We have so many new technologies that are emerging, so many new technological practices. All of us in this day and age have to really be looking regularly at how capable we are. Do we have the skills? Do we have the resources in order to be successful given whatever challenges are being faced in your organization? And then, of course, you know, big initiatives, medium-sized initiatives, smaller, more operational initiatives. It really can be applied to any improvement initiative that you undertake. And if you get good at thinking this way and applying this methodical approach to how you look at any type of a challenge or any type of an opportunity, you're going to get really good at it, right? And you're going to be able to start to do it more quickly. So ITIL Practitioner introduces 9 guiding principles, and the first 3 of the 9 guiding principles are to focus on value, and that really speaks to value from the perspective of your customer. Remember that it is our customers that at the end of the day define what they value. We don't define that for them. But we also have to focus on value across the entire IT value stream. It really doesn't matter if our dev folks are really doing a great job introducing agile practices and they're introducing software changes more quickly. The customers, the business is really excited about that. But if we still have maybe some, you know, overly robust and perhaps bureaucratic processes on the upside of the house and we're not delivering those changes quickly, then we're still not delivering value. We're still not satisfying our customers. Design for experience, and that is the customer experience. And how do we make sure that we design for customer experience? One of the things we have to make sure we do is have good feedback loops and make sure that we're capturing any feedback than we get from our customers. And herein lies the answer to the where do we start question. Start where you are. You know, I like to always emphasize how important it is to honor the past. You know, sometimes when we learn something new or some new initiative comes along, there's this tendency to think, oh, okay, here's now the next great thing, and this is going to help us overcome all of our challenges. And unfortunately, that sometimes also comes along with this notion that what we've done up until now isn't working, isn't relevant anymore. We have to, you know, it's kind of an all or nothing mentality of, and I hear folks say this in the context of DevOps. People say ITIL is dead, you know, DevOps is the new way. Well, DevOps will not succeed and cannot succeed without good, solid IT service management practices underpinning it. So let's honor the past and let's make sure that we understand that everything that we've done up until now got us to this current level of maturity. And now this is about continuous improvement. This is really about saying, okay, what challenges are we facing, or where is there some opportunity that we need to meet in order to support the vision of our overall organization, and figure out from the point at which we are now, given the capabilities and the resources we have now, what can we do now in order to progress forward. And we may have, you know, and we always do have some things we can do right away, some short-term things. We have some things that, and I'm sorry, I realized that I was, and I apologize. Somebody call me on that if I do that again.
I got it done. So, I closed it for you.
Oh, thank you. It just occurred to me I was still seeing it.
No, we're good.
Make sure that you have those short-term initiatives that you can undertake right away, and you may have a longer-term vision, but be willing to accept that that vision might change as you go. You're going to learn from everything that you do, and you know, take that feedback and incorporate that feedback into your next steps. I love this quote from Melissa Sargent, who's a director at CA, and she says it's a journey, and the context of her quote is DevOps, but take DevOps out of it. It's a journey. Whatever challenge you're looking to face in your organization, it's a journey. There is no silver bullet, and we all do this. We get caught up in analysis paralysis, especially when it comes with methodologies and frameworks. So, you know, let's not get stuck there. Start making changes, get the wins, let the organization evolve from there. So start where you are, and now the next guiding principles. Work holistically. I think we all understand the importance of thinking about people, processes, technology, understanding that if you change one, it's going to affect the others, and we need to think about them all. We also, in this day and age, certainly have to be thinking about our partners. We have to think about not only the IT value stream as we know it within the boundaries of our organization, but, you know, almost every organization today has third-party providers, suppliers of some kind that you're interfacing with, and we have to think about our relationships with those suppliers as well whenever we're undertaking improvement initiatives. Progress iteratively, and this is one of the biggest messages that comes out of agile methodologies like Scrum, that idea of making smaller, more manageable improvements. You know, sometimes we want to have this, you know, if we're implementing a new process, we want to have, you know, cross every T and dot every I and make sure that we've thought about every conceivable activity and every single procedure associated with this process, and that's where analysis paralysis kicks in. That's where we just don't move fast enough for the organization. So by looking at things, by approaching things from the standpoint of what are the minimum critical activities, or what is the minimum viable product, what is the most pared down version of whatever I'm doing that I can do, and then know that that's going to be good for now, right? It's going to progress me forward. It's going to give me feedback, and then based on that feedback, I make improvements that are really meaningful instead of guessing at what I think is going to be successful. And then always observe directly. In Lean, they say go to Gemba. Go out and talk to people. Go out and watch people working. I was a process owner for a lot of years, and I used to go sit down next to my service desk analyst, or sit down next to people. I was a change manager at one point in my career. Sit down next to the people who were creating changes so that I could really understand what that looked like and how they were using the process or the technology that underpins that process. And get that insight from, you know, observing with my own two eyes what was going on, instead of just letting reports tell me something that wasn't necessarily the true or full story. So we can't help but quote Yogi Berra here, you observe a lot by just watching. So the last three guiding principles are to be transparent, collaborate, and keep it simple. Transparency is so important. It's one of the pillars of Scrum as a methodology, for example. And be transparent really is about making sure that your improvement initiatives are visible. You know, a lot of times, and some of you kind of said this, you know, 33% of you said, well, we work on things in our spare time. You know, that may be because these improvement initiatives, one reason may be because these improvement initiatives aren't visible. And when things aren't visible, there's a tendency to think they're not important. So if we make them more visible, whether it's putting them on a Kanban board or putting them on our weekly status report or putting them on some kind of a dashboard and kind of showing the progress associated with our improvement initiative, and you know, we're going to make sure that everybody understands how we're doing, and we're also going to have the opportunity to speak to any lessons we learn along the way. I know for some of you, you may work in organizations where, you know, failure is not an option, or there is an expectation that when you do something, you're going to do it right and you're going to get it done. But that's really counter to this whole notion of working iteratively and working incrementally. Sometimes you are going to fail, and the key is to make sure that you learn from those failures, be very honest and open about what you learn from those failures, so hopefully you prevent other people from making the same mistakes, and then move on from there. Collaboration, we know, is critical. DevOps, one of the reasons why DevOps exists today is because organizations really understand how important it is that it is that the development side of the house and the operations side of the house collaborate together and work together to make sure we have fast flow across the entire value stream. But it doesn't end with dev and ops. Information security management, quality assurance, any stakeholder in the IT value stream needs to, in this day and age, work together, learn together, and improve together so that you don't end up with a situation where you're making improvements in one part of the organization, but you then end up with a constraint because those same improvements haven't been reflected in another part of the organization. And we all understand keep it simple, but we all sometimes feel compelled to over-engineer things, or we have this tendency to kind of, again, want to cross every T and dot every I. So I think part of what ITIL Practitioner brings is that mindset shift to really, if each and every individual within an organization, if each and every ITIL Practitioner can condition themselves to keep it simple, to always be asking, what is the minimum viable product? What are the minimum critical activities? What's the most simplest way that we can do this right now in order to make progress? You're going to make progress much more quickly. And I'm going to kind of wrap up the 9 guiding principles with a quote from one of our great friends, Butch Sheets, who actually happens to be out in the audience today. Think big, right? Understand the vision, start small, and go fast. And by working iteratively, by working on smaller improvement changes, you are going to be able to go faster. And you're going to be able to show that proof of concept much more quickly. So how else, in addition to introducing these 9 guiding principles, how else does ITIL Practitioner help individuals make this mind shift and help individuals to be able to have more confidence and work more effectively in terms of making improvements within their organizations? One of the things that ITIL Practitioner provides is a very powerful toolkit. There are a myriad of templates that are part of the ITIL Practitioner toolkit, lots of different sample documents. So you are never in a position where you have to reinvent the wheel with something. If you want to stand up a CSI register in your organization, there is a sample CSI register for you to take a look at and use as your starting point. And it's a toolkit, right? It's really something that's designed, again, for you to adopt and adapt as appropriate in your organization. I mentioned that ITIL Practitioner introduces 3 critical competencies, and I also want to speak briefly to what those competencies are, and it's not going to be any surprise here. Anytime you're making changes or making improvements, this is culture change in its purest form, so organizational change management is so important. Preparing people, equipping people, motivating people, making sure that changes that you're making are being done with people and for people and not to people, which almost invariably ends up causing resentment. Measurement and metrics, and really being able to, first of all, baseline. Remember, one of the guiding principles is to start where you are, and an excellent practice is to baseline that, capture metrics that let you know how you're performing today, make your changes, and then monitor those metrics to show proof of concept, or to be able to know, Deming says plan to act, plan to check, act. And one of the things people sometimes forget with that check part is that what Deming wants you to do is not just put a check mark and say, yeah, we're done. He wants you to analyze how you did. Did we produce the desired result? And if we didn't, why not? Did we have requirements changed? Did we misunderstand the current environment, right? There may be a lot of reasons. What are the lessons we can learn there? And use your metrics to do that. And then certainly communicate. I always say, if you think you're communicating enough, double your efforts. You got to be out there talking to people. We're all busy in this day and age. You might read an email, and really that email's gone. Like, you forget what the details of that email were 5 minutes later. So we all, I think, in this day and age need to see information in smaller chunks. We need to be able to see it just in time. We need to then see it again. communication is critical. So what ITIL Practitioner does is transform knowledge, and we get that knowledge in the ITIL core guidance. We get that knowledge in courses like ITIL Foundation, where we learn what IT service management is, what the processes are associated with IT service management, what the critical competencies are. Take that knowledge, that what, that why it's so important to the business, and then transform it into practice. Have methodical steps that you can take, guiding principles that you can use in order to then apply what you've learned and apply it to, you know, why that's important. So let's talk a little bit about the qualification itself. And if you have any questions, and I don't answer them, please let me know. I've tried to leave plenty of time for questions. So the qualification itself is dependent, has ITIL Foundation as a prerequisite, but that's the only prerequisite. If you hold a foundation cert, you're good to go. And I think I always like to emphasize that applies to taking the exam. Okay? If you're not an exam kind of guy or girl, that's okay. You can come to an ITIL Practitioner class and just not take the exam. So that prerequisite doesn't prevent you from entering into a class. It simply prevents you from sitting for the exam. I always like to kind of clarify that, because I know some people don't necessarily, they want the knowledge, they want the understanding, they don't necessarily care about the exam, and that's okay. ITIL Practitioner does count as 3 credits towards ITIL Expert, those of you who are on an ITIL Expert journey. And I really want to emphasize that it's not a prerequisite for ITIL Intermediate courses. So while the diagram kind of looks like it, notice that there's no little arrows here, right? So you don't have to take ITIL Practitioner in order to get into an ITIL Intermediate class, whether it's a life cycle class or a capability class. You really, it kind of stands alone, and you can really take it at any point, you know, in the course of your journey. So I really just came up with a couple of slides to illustrate that ITIL Practitioner is really for all IT service management professionals. I mean, each and every one of us is tasked with, on a daily basis, improving, even if only the way we work as an individual, hopefully the way we work within our team and the way we work within our great organization. So you could take a path that says, okay, I'm going to take ITIL Foundation, I'm going to take ITIL Practitioner, just to kind of now start to have this tucked in my mind, this methodical way to approach how to adopt and adapt this guidance that I get from ITIL, and then maybe go dive into the details of a capability course or a life cycle course, so that again you have in the back of your mind, as you're diving now into the details, this understanding, that these guiding principles, you know, of how important it is to start where you are and keep it simple, for example. And I think in this day and age also, we all have, as part of our career path, the need to specialize in some particular area, and that's going to vary from person to person. You know, you may be someone who's very involved in processes like change and release management, as shown in my example, and so you really should understand DevOps and what DevOps is all about, and how organizations need to adapt these key processes like change and release in order to help DevOps practices succeed in your organization. Having said that, your specialization, the areas you specialize, may have to do with some technology within your organization, right? This is your career path, and you're going to figure out in what areas you need to specialize. And then if you're on an ITIL path, right, then you understand the need to kind of acquire those additional credits in order to sit for your managing across the life cycle exam. Now, having said that, if you've already gone to a capability course, maybe you've gone to release control and validation or operational support analysis, right? One of the more advanced ITIL courses. you absolutely can and should take ITIL Practitioner, because again, you came out, this is, when you're taking these pure ITIL qualifications, um, you're learning the what, the why, and in varying degrees of granularity, right? At foundation, you're sitting up at a very, very high level. When you start going to a capability or life cycle course, you're starting to dive down into the details. And again, what ITIL Practitioner does is give you that how. And remember, just same principles apply here. Start where you are. Make sure that you understand, what's important in terms of your career path, and figure out where, again, where maybe you need to specialize in a particular area in order to broaden out your knowledge, or you perhaps could benefit from that just good practical guidance in terms of how to apply what you're, everything that you know, and how to get out work with others in order to do that. Remember that critical competencies are organizational change management, metrics, communication, right? So if you feel like your knowledge is really good, but you feel like you could be better at, getting people on board, or, helping to communicate what you feel is important, or helping you better just collaborate with other people and get, perhaps better at listening to other people and considering other people's perspectives. Practitioner would help with that. And if you are on the ITIL expert path, the last thing I want to mention is you can drop it in wherever you want. So if you've already, you're on your ITIL journey, you've already taken several courses, but you've got some credits left that you need to acquire in order to sit for your managing across the life cycle, you may find that managing or that ITIL Practitioner is a good step for you, right? It's a good consideration for you. Now, I want to emphasize, and anybody who's on a MALC journey or a ITIL expert journey, you know this, you've got to have a balanced knowledge of the ITIL life cycle. So if you do drop ITIL Practitioner in, then know that you may create some little knowledge gaps for yourself in terms of, what part of the life cycle you didn't introduce, and grab the books and focus on, expanding your education in those areas so that you can, in fact, have that rounded perspective. And ITIL experts, more than anybody, I think you've got to never stop learning and always expanding your knowledge. And, again, we're in a day and age where people all the time are saying things like, ITIL's dead and DevOps is replacing it. And so a good ITIL expert has the ability to say, let me help you understand how DevOps and IT service management interface, and let me help you understand the types of changes we need to make to our IT service management processes in order for DevOps to succeed. So that just awareness of industry trends and practices and how to adapt guidance, the ITIL guidance in particular in this case, it is such an important part of what an ITIL expert does, and an important role that an ITIL expert plays within our industry. So yeah, there's a little exam thing at the end, and so a little bit about the exam. The exam is an hour and 45 minutes for 40 scenario-based questions. Now, given that the foundation exam is an hour for 40 questions, that should tell you a little something. This exam is harder. It's comparable to the intermediate exams in that it's Bloom Level 3 and Bloom Level 4, where there's analysis, application of your knowledge analysis that's occurring. There is a 2-page case study, so it's not like the MALC exam where there's a kind of much more comprehensive case study. It's a little kind of couple of pages, but it does accompany the exam, and it really is kind of an integral part of the exam. You absolutely do have to use it in order to be successful on the exam. So the exam's a little bit of a hybrid from the standpoint that it's not exactly like the intermediates, like the capability exams where you see these kind of comprehensive scenarios associated with each question, and it's not exactly like MAC where you see this long case study. It's kind of a hybrid between the two. Now, for any of you who are thinking about taking the exam, please highlight, make a note. I kind of wanted to emphasize this. This is an open book exam, and before you say, oh goody, let me say two things about that. You can only have a clean copy of the official publication with you for the exam. So if you buy the book or if you get a book as part of your course, don't write in it. That's kind of a really important point. Don't write in it because you actually can't use it if you've got notes in it. If you've written in it or if you've highlighted stuff in it, you won't be able to use the book for the exam. It's got to be a clean copy of the book. So that's number one. Keep your book nice and neat and clean. The second thing I would say is please do not underestimate how challenging open book exams are. I think people really sometimes underestimate how long it takes to look stuff up in the book. And so this is one of those exams, and I took the exam, and when I take any exam, I take the paper once, I go through, I take it a second time, and I kind of go through and primarily touch things where I have a little question mark in my mind about what the right answer was. And only then did I go and I had one question that I looked up in the book. So, and I was down to like the last 10 minutes of the time at that point in time. So I know sometimes people get excited about the notion of open book exams. Please do not underestimate how long it takes to look stuff up. So you really want to be going into this exam feeling really, really confident with your knowledge. And then again, if you're looking up a little thing here or there, then awesome. Okay. And again, that hour and 45 minutes coupled with Bloom 3.4 should kind of give you some insight to the type of exam it is. This isn't something where you can do rote memorization and memorize a bunch of terms and memorize a bunch of lists and be successful. You really are going to be challenged to analyze what's in the case study, to apply the 9 guiding principles in combination with the CSI approach. So it's definitely more difficult of an exam. So I guess let me kind of pause for a second and see what kind of questions you all have, and then we'll go from there. I have a couple of slides just in case I get asked particular questions. So let's see what kind of questions you have.
Thank you, Donna. We have a lot of varied questions here for you, as we thought we might.
Okay.
But nice. Before we do that, I just want to say, just to give a little shout out for the next webinar so that we can just continue with the question and answers once we get there. For those of you who need to drop off, I'd just like to remind you that our next webinar is scheduled for Thursday, April 24th, when Dr. Gail Ferreira, who is the Agile Practice Leader at the Matrix Resources San Francisco Center for Excellence, is going to join us. And Gail's presentation is titled Agile Transformation at Scale. And rapid scale directly impacts all levels of decision-making, planning, execution, culture, and communications for executives in hypergrowth companies. In this session, we're going to discuss how to organize, support, and tailor agile practices for teams and sub-teams in companies with a rapid growth cycle. We're going to share contemporary case studies of hypergrowth companies who have delivered agile at scale. So we're looking forward to having you join us when we do that. And actually, Eric wants to say something as well, Donna. So let's let him do that, and then we'll start our Q&A session. Eric, are you there?
Thank you so much, ladies. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Perfect, perfect. Donna, thank you so much for your awesome, awesome webinar today. It's been really nice to get a kind of a feel for what ITIL Practitioner is going to be, and we're really excited for our first class on May 2nd. I know that's what everybody wants to hear, and that's what I want to talk about for just a second. We have our first offering of this ITIL Practitioner course May 2nd. There are still seats opening up, but we're going to have limited availability very soon. So when you get a chance, go on the website and save your seat. we'd love to have you in class for our first offering. I also just kind of wanted to take a second to talk about something near and dear to my heart, and that's organizational change. You know, with all this talk of DevOps, of you know, Agile, and you know, all these kind of newer things, these newer ideas popping up, it's difficult to get some organizational buy-in, some cultural buy-in. So how do you do that? Well, organizational change is kind of the best way to do that. We have a workshop coming up on April 12th that talks a little bit about that. We'd love to see everybody here in that course on April 12th. It's going to be a great course. It's just kind of a roll up your sleeves and walk away with some great assets. So again, that course is going to be on April 12th, and actually, the first 5 people that email info@itsmacademy.com are going to receive a free seat to the course. So go ahead and email info@itsmacademy.com. We'd love to see you guys in the class, and we'd love to see an ITIL practitioner as well. Back to you, Karen, and back to you, Donna, as well.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that. So the free seat is for organizational change, the free seats?
That's correct.
Perfect. Thank you. We like free seats. All right, Donna, you ready?
I am.
Okay. So
I've been kind of looking at these questions.
Yeah.
And trying to figure out if there's a methodical approach. So I'm gonna answer a couple, and then Karen, if you can help me keep track of the ones I haven't answered yet, because some of them are the same.
Okay.
So one of the questions that got asked was, is this an Axelos thing or is this an ITSM Academy thing? So ITIL Practitioner Guidance, the official publication, is an Axelos publication. The certification, the qualification, is part of the ITIL Qualification Scheme. Let me go back to the ITIL Qualification Scheme. And so that is governed by Axelos. And ITSM Academy, you know, Eric just mentioned we have a course coming up starting on May 2nd. ITSM Academy will be offering training based on the ITIL Practitioner, you know, guidance publication and the syllabus associated with this qualification. So it is part of the official ITIL portfolio. It's a complementary publication to the ITIL core guidance, and the certification is part of the ITIL qualification scheme. So I think there's that. There were a couple of questions about the PDF version. It's my understanding, and I have written a note to verify this, but it's my understanding that you have to take the physical book, the actual public, you know, the printed book into the exam with you, that you can't take a PDF that you've printed off into the exam with you. And think about it, you could have just created a document. They want to see the bound publication, and they want to see that you haven't had any, you know, haven't made any notes in that publication. Plus, for any of you who take the virtual exams, in a virtual exam environment, in a web-based exam environment, typically it kind of takes control of your workstation, and so you don't really have the ability to swap from, you know, a PDF to a and back and forth to the exam. But in the physical classroom, you need to have the book. So the official ITIL practitioner publication as it comes from Axelos. So that's like a couple of the questions. There's a question about CSI, suggestion, take CSI before practitioner, great benefit in understanding concepts. And I actually, I thought I might get a question about CSI, and so I created a little slide so that I could kind of answer this, because there is, I think some folks do maybe think that ITIL practitioner, because it talks about the CSI approach, it overlaps with ITIL CSI, and it overlaps very, very, very lightly. ITIL practitioner is really for any improvement initiative. So it's a service improvement, a process improvement, a a capability improvement in terms of, maybe looking at the skills of the people within your organization. It touches very, very, its focus is on the 9 guiding principles combined with the CSI approach, so it goes into pretty good detail about the CSI approach, and then the 3 capabilities. ITIL CSI is really about the CSI stage of the life cycle. So it's really talking about where CSI fits in relation to service strategy, design, transition, and operation. It actually spends very, very little time talking about the CSI approach. There's a nod to the CSI approach, but its focus is more on the metrics, the models, and the techniques. So a big part of what we talk about in ITIL CSI, for example, is the 7-step improvement process, right? In terms of looking at making sure that you're capturing the data that you need to, how to then analyze and present that data in a way that's meaningful to the target audience, and then taking actions based on that data. So they have little places where they interface. CSI, of course, talks about metrics and measurements, so there's a little bit of an overlap there, but really pretty significant chunks of each of those courses stands alone. In terms of taking CSI before a practitioner, I'm a huge advocate of taking CSI because I do think it's so important to understand things like where that stage fits in the life cycle and the 7-step improvement process. So I just think that CSI gives you insight into kind of anything you do in relation to ITIL. People always ask me what courses, like about the order of courses, and I always say take CSI and take strategy. Like if you're on a MAC journey, take CSI and take strategy, and then from there, look at what you do and what your responsibilities are within your company, and kind of choose something that's meaningful to you otherwise. So hopefully that answers your question. I don't want to prescriptively say, like, yes, always take CSI before ITIL practitioner, but I did want to kind of communicate to the fact that one doesn't undo the other, right? They don't overlap to such an extent that, right, they invalidate each other. Is the case study delivered in advance of the exam like with MALC? Yes. And I'll speak to ITSM Academy. Our course is based on the official case study, so you will use in class the same case study that it will be used on the exam, so you'll become very, very familiar with that case study. One of the things I do want to mention is that for this particular certification, class is not required, although it is very, very strongly recommended. And one of the reasons why it's strongly recommended is because of the Bloom level on the exam. The course associated with this exam is about 2/3 experiential. So in other words, you're spending about 2/3 of your time in practical assignments and learning how to apply the 9 guiding principles and apply the CSI approach to the case study. And about 1/3 of the time is spent on lecture and learning just the core principles and the core concepts. So it kind of is really designed to help you shift your thinking. And if you were to approach an exam like this without kind of having undergone that shift in thinking, if you kind of just go in like, well, I memorized the 9 guiding principles and I memorized the CSI approach, and I'm going to go in with that, Bloom Level 1, Bloom Level 2 knowledge, you may find that you struggle with this particular exam. So having said that, the syllabus and the sample exams are available on the Axelos website. So this is an official, again, this is part of the ITIL Qualification Scheme. So if you just kind of Google ITIL official site, and once you get into the Axelos site, go to the ITIL Practitioner page, you can find that information. Let's see, what else did I not answer? Yeah, the clean copy, I hear you, Greg. I understand. That's why I wanted to emphasize the clean copy, because I know I have to say I'm an author, and it took me like a long time to get over writing in books, like, because I just, I always value books, and I don't know if one day, a light switch went on, and I started writing in books, and now like the idea of not being able to write in my books is like, what are you talking about? But it's the requirement, and trust me, lots been said about it, but as of this moment, it's the requirement. How do I get a copy of the book? We actually have the book. If you go to itsmacademy.com, we have it in our bookstore. It's also available now on, things like Amazon.com. ITSMF has it in their bookstore, so it's out there. It's available for it. I think in February, the end of February, it was officially published. So, I think I've answered the question about online proctored exam. Yeah, right. It'll be online. What else, Karen? Are you seeing anything I didn't answer?
I can't tell because there were multiple questions and I wasn't really quite sure, but I can tell you what I'm still showing as open, if that's helpful for you.
Okay.
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 So Denise is saying that she's tasked with building standard operating procedures for application testing, and which course or courses would assist her?
So, given the slide that I have in front of me, here, and the one course I really didn't speak to when I was talking about this How-To 101 is Certified Process Design Engineer. And Certified Process Design Engineer is really how-to in terms of process design and improvement. So it really very much focuses on designing and improving processes, and as part of that, we talk about procedures. We provide you a procedure template. As part of the course, we actually, I think we have a procedure template under the free resources link in our website. So I think CPDE would help you get some of that insight. Now, having said that, it's not going to necessarily talk about the specific, procedures that you're looking to write. It's going to talk to you more about procedures and how they relate to processes, and we kind of talk about ensuring the appropriate level of detail at the process level versus at the procedure level, and making sure that things like processes and procedures are appropriate to their target audience, so you get some of that kind of insight. So I think given that criteria, I would say CPDE will be really useful to you. Will CPD ever be offered as a virtual course? It actually is offered as a virtual course. And I can look at, let me go back to my calendar. CPDE, it's not, the next CPDE is in Fort Lauderdale, but it has been offered in the virtual classroom, and I'm sure it will be offered again in the virtual classroom, so stay tuned. And if you're interested, let Eric know, because we sometimes do things as a blended class where we have some people in the physical classroom and some people in the virtual classroom. So Eric, if you're looking at these notes, perhaps you can reach out.
If there's interest in a virtual classroom, absolutely let me know, and I'm open to the idea as long as we have some interest.
Yeah.
And Donna, there's a question here from Linda. She's asking how long the course is. So there, Linda, you can see ITIL Practitioner is right there as well, the May 2nd class.
But thank you for reminding me about that. So ITIL Practitioner is scoped. If you look at the syllabus for the course, it's scoped as a 2-day class excluding the exam. And that's really important, excluding the exam. So you're not going to see situations where it's run over 2 days with the exam in the afternoon of the second day. It's just way too much information, and you kind of need some time to go through that shift in how you see things. We offer it in the virtual classroom over 4 days And do I have those dates right? Over 4 days or over 5 days? Eric, can you double check my slide for me there? Is it 2 through 6 or is it 2 through 5? I apologize, everybody. But we offer it for 4 hours. So the nice thing, and a lot of our students tell us they like this about the virtual classroom, for a lot of our classes, we run it only half a day. So you can kind of work part of the day and you don't feel overwhelmed that your mailbox is filling up and that you're missing meetings or whatever. And plus, especially for this class, you actually have time to just assimilate what you're learning. You have time to sit and think, and you know, part of what we'll be doing is giving you some homework assignments that really require that you apply the guiding principles and think through, okay, which guiding principles will be appropriate in this particular scenario. So by kind of spreading it out over multiple days, it's still a 16-hour course for all intents and purposes. We tend to spread it out over a little bit longer period of time, just again so that you're not, you know, coming in and getting the kind of fire hose approach to what you're learning.
Donna, your dates are correct, by the way.
Okay, so it's 5 days, 4 hours a day.
Correct.
All right, thank you. So thanks for asking that. But Axelos's kind of official, you know, the scope of the syllabus calls for this to be a 2-day, 16-hour course, excluding the exam. Okay. Other questions? I know we're kind of at time, so I'm happy to stick around and answer any other questions. I'm kind of going through the chats to see that I get them all. I think I got most of them.
Yeah, did we answer Greg's, Donna, on the, he said perhaps it's a topic for another presentation? He's talking about how does the ITIL framework and the ITIL practitioner overlay with or complement or conflict with the idea of bimodal IT? Did you see that one?
So that's an interesting question. So first of all, for anybody who doesn't know what bimodal is about, bimodal is a Gartner concept that speaks to the capabilities that are needed in IT organizations today. And those capabilities are, number one, traditional capabilities where we focus on things like ensuring stability and reliability in our environments and in our services. And then the second mode is the mode that enables sustained innovation. So here's where we start to see much more of our agile practices come into play, our DevOps practices come into play, where we're really looking at making faster changes, where we're perhaps experimenting. You know, so here's where you see the experimentation and learning approach to DevOps coming into play. And so what Gartner says is, let's understand that it's not an all or nothing in this day and age. It's not that you're all traditional or you're all agile. You really have to do both in this day and age, and let's look at the capabilities that you need in order to do that. And also let's look at your services, because you may have some services, and Gartner calls them, for example, services or systems of record, where these are your kind of bread and butter services. They're perhaps heavily regulated. You know, stability is critical. And it's going to be those services where these traditional practices are so important. And then you may have what Gartner calls systems of innovation, where this is the new stuff. This is the stuff you're experimenting with. This is the stuff where you're trying to get out there fast so that you can, you know, be out in front of your competitors. And that's where that kind of more agile approach to doing things comes into play. So that was, I'm sorry, that was like a really long drawn out definite description. But having said that, so I think if you look at the 9 guiding principles, what the 9 guiding principles does, let's take the ITIL framework, and the ITIL framework provides you all kinds of guidance in terms of how to put in place good, solid service management practices. And the part that often gets overlooked is the part where ITIL talks about making sure that those practices are scalable. In other words, not all changes, for example, have to go to the change advisory board. We can have standard changes that can go very, very quickly, and we can have more, complex and higher risk changes that we, in fact, do need to have more rigor and, take a more rigorous approach to, right? So ITIL has throughout it conversations about the need to maintain that balance between stability and agility, and that need to, be responsive to changing business needs, and at the same time maintain stability. So I do think if you understand ITIL, the fundamental premises of bimodal are inherent in ITIL. Having said that, what the guiding principles do is reinforce, right, that, some of the things like working iteratively, keeping it simple, they enable us to kind of better embrace that more agile way of thinking, even within a traditional model. So even if you're operating within a traditional model, you still need to continuously improve. You still need to be responsive to, you still need to focus on value, right? You still need to focus on customer experience. So I think the ITIL framework and the guiding principles work beautifully together, and do, especially because of principles like progress iteratively and collaborate, right? Those are practices that are very inherent in the agile mode of doing things. So I think they're very complementary.
Thank you, Donna.
Greg, I'd be happy to talk to you about that offline if you want to, if you want a longer answer than that.
And I just want to say I've got a couple more comments for you, but if anybody else has any other questions, if you can chat them in now, that would be great. There are a couple people that are asking about information about the class and the pricing of the class, and that's all on our website. It's up there with dates and with pricing and with additional information about what the class entails. So feel free to check that out on our website at www.itsmacademy.com. And I also have a question from Susan. Susan's asking, is it possible to get certified to train ITIL practitioner, and could they do that with us? And the answer to that is yes. And what we'll do is we will have, Eric will take a note and have somebody contact you regarding that, Susan. And I'm just checking, Don. I think that's it for our questions.
And there's a big laundry list of requirements, but Karen would go over all that stuff with you.
Yes. Oh, and Greg would like to follow up with you. He said he'd love to follow up with you.
Yeah,
okay.
Sure. So I think I would just like to close by saying I'm really excited about this new qualification. I think the guiding principles are spot on in terms of how we need to think in this day and age. Some of you heard me say this before. I became a Scrum Master about 4 years ago, and it definitely shifted my thinking. And so I was really excited when I saw the guiding principles, because a lot of the changes in my thought processes, relative to the guiding principles, I kind of have been through, and it was really nice to reinforce those. So I'm very excited about it, and I think you're going to find that it's really going to enable you to move. Sometimes we get stuck with improvement initiatives, or things always take longer than we think they should, or we work so hard to make some kind of a change and then nobody's happy, right? And I think you're going to find that the guiding principles are going to really help you overcome some of those types of things that happen in our organizations today. And so I'm psyched. I'm excited about it. Looking forward to teaching it. So thank you all for hanging around. I appreciate it.
Right, yes. And that's it for the questions. And once again, I'd just like to remind everybody that our next webinar is scheduled for Thursday, April 4th, when Dr. Gail Ferreira, Agile Practice Leader at the Matrix Resources, San Francisco Center of Excellence, is going to be joining us with her presentation on Agile Transformation at Scale. And I'd like to just remind you that this particular presentation is available to you. If you would like us to present it to you in your group virtually, we'd be happy to do that for you. And as you log out, please take a minute to complete the post-webinar survey. This survey gives you the opportunity to request any webinar topics that you'd like to see presented in the future. So, for instance, Greg, if you wanted more detail on the topics that you were suggesting, we could actually do that for you as well. So your feedback is very important to us as part of our continual service improvement. So please take a moment to fill out those surveys for us. And we will be sending you an invitation for the next webinar and look forward to having you join us. And Donna, I'd like to thank you. Very, very informative. I mean, people were very excited to hear about what was going on with ITIL Practitioner. And as you can see, you generated lots of questions and lots of interest on that. So thank you so much for being with us today and doing that.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Everybody have a wonderful day.